half your head missing. All right, there we go.
What?
My camera setup was like straight on my face. It's a little too much. Welcome to the Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com and Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Alex Baker's gone for the week. He'll be back on Monday. It's just myself, Dave Loughran, and Adam Scher doing what we always do, holding down the fort. 10-game Thursday night. What's up, man?
How's it going? Looking forward to another slate. Hopefully can do a little bit better than I did yesterday.
All right. And you can see clearly now.
Yeah. Had run out of contacts, so I have daily contacts, but I had the same ones in since like Saturday. So it was getting a little blurry and starting to give me a headache. So glad to be good again.
Well, that's good to hear. I did the strategy show with Jake this morning, and off the top, it was kind of an interesting one because you've got Morton and Odorizzi and Montas at the top, right? None of these guys are Chris Sale or Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander or Garrett Cole, but they've all been pretty good. And then you've got guys like Zach Galan, who on our projections over at Awesemo, we have him as the third highest projected pitcher on DraftKings and FanDuel. So some really interesting spots here. Wade LeBlanc ownership projected to be through the roof on DraftKings at that price point. Pitching's an interesting one for this 10-gamer.
Yeah, it really is. It's a slate where I think there's a lot of similarly projected pitchers in each price range. So I would lean towards going to the lower guys. It's a slate where I'm more comfortable just kind of spreading out my exposure at pitcher because I'm not confident in a lot of guys, and the guys that I would be confident in are really overpriced or at least fairly priced. So probably won't really have too concentrated of a pitcher pool today.
All right. Let's get it started then. New York Yankees, Houston Astros, Framber Valdez, Chad Green opening this one up. He's been pretty solid recently. So is Valdez, though. He hasn't looked bad. He's also had some really appealing matchups. This one, not so much. Blake Snell didn't get 2 outs before he was gone. Couldn't hit the strike zone. This team wasn't swinging. They just bludgeoned him in the first inning. I'm not acting like that's going to happen to Blake Snell every start or that the Yankees are going to do that to pitchers every start. Just pointing out, Adam, this is a really good Yankees lineup that's beginning to get very healthy.
Yeah, it certainly is. Really, really scary. And, you had mentioned, we talked before about them, once they get back Judge to go along with Stanton, you will have more strikeouts in the lineup than they did before. Obviously, it comes with more power, but also against left-handed pitchers, that's not quite the case either because they strike out a bit less against lefties. They do a bit more damage, as you would expect with the platoon advantage. So, facing another lefty here in Valdez, who doesn't have great strikeout stuff, he's been good in his limited time in the major leagues at limiting damage, but this is a really, really potent Yankees lineup. Yankee Stadium is better for hitters than Houston is, and it's just a really tough spot. So I'm not interested in the pitching here. Very much interested in Yankees bats, especially on DraftKings. They're actually pretty affordable too. $4,900 for Gary Sanchez is one of the lower price tags I think we've seen recently. Giancarlo Stanton at $4,600 is basically just a misprice when it comes to ownership. Luke Voigt's my highest projected first baseman on the slate. So, I think it's a really appealing tournament spot for New York.
So do I. It's too dark in my office. I'm trying to make it right, but I'm going to have to deal with the glare. I don't like the darkness.
Now you just have like lines of light across your face.
I could just do this. Now it's just half of my face is seen and the other half isn't. Whatever. All you need to do is hear us. Anyway, I'm with you on the Yankees, man. This is a pretty frightening lineup. And while I think Valdez is a good enough pitcher, it just kind of doesn't matter today. And I'm going off of that. I mean, you've got LeMahieu, Voit, Sanchez, Stanton, Encarnacion, Torres, Gregorius. Just that 1 through 7 is so damning. And they believe they have a 5.4 run total here. Everything stacks up nice for them, and they're at Yankee Stadium. What about the other side of this one? Do you know who's coming in relief?
I think it's supposed to be Nestor Cortez.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see any confirmation, but I guess
I mean, I haven't seen it confirmed, but he threw He pitched on the 15th, so today should be his day. He followed Chad Green on the 15th against the White Sox.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you have any interest in Houston bats?
Yeah, I do. Cortez is okay, but you're getting some pretty appealing price tags on the Astros. Jose Altuve is $3,800 on DraftKings. I'm not exactly sure how that possibly happens, but it's a miss. The Astros are like faced or priced like they're facing someone really good. Bregman's 4,500, Altuve's 38, Alvarez is 42. Lefty lefty matchup for most of the game for him, but still a really good power hitter. Houston's just really, really affordable here. You have Tyler White again at first base as a value option, and on other sites they're affordable as well. You have on FanDuel Bregman at 4,300, Altuve's 37, Alvarez is 38, Yahoo $20 for Bregman, but 17 for Altuve. They're probably the most difficult to get to on Yahoo, but still not that difficult. So yeah, their price tags just make me interested. Cortez isn't terrible, but the Astros do still have a lot of good bats, and you can get a very good offensive team along with pretty much whatever pitching you want.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just think we should expect to see a good amount of scoring in this game. I mean, the Yankees have the third highest total on the slate and 4.7 for Houston. Both teams, I would expect to put some runs up today. Two quality teams. And as you mentioned on Altuve's price point, that's just outrageous. I don't care who you're facing. That's way, way too cheap for him.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like who could have been on the Yankees that they'd be facing, and even if it was Tanaka, that would be too cheap of a price tag.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. All right. Well, let's keep moving then. We got Washington and Philadelphia. Nick Pavetta, Eric Fetty. The broken nose narrative came through, although really it's just the Phillies have been terrible and Max Scherzer's really good.
Yeah, not really expecting the same thing from Eric Fetty tonight. He's never really put it together. What?
I said, oh no?
No.
Threw me off.
I think there might be a little bit of a talent drop off here. But yeah, I mean, Fetty's the price tag's appealing. The one thing I will say about Fetty is on DraftKings, where we have LeBlanc projected for 45% ownership right now, which is absolutely just crazy. Eric Fetty is he's not worse than LeBlanc. He's probably better than LeBlanc. The matchup's not as good, but if you do need to get to that price range, going to Fetty certainly isn't crazy because playing LeBlanc at 45% ownership is nuts.
Yep.
But you mentioned at the top of the show, there is no Scherzer, there is no Cole. It's not a slate where I feel like it's completely necessary to be going, a really expensive SP1 with a cheap SP2. So that'll probably kind of keep me out of that price range in general. And I would much rather get to Phillies bats, especially on DraftKings where they are really cheap. On Yahoo and FanDuel, they're affordable, but on DraftKings, 4,300 Real Muto, 4,300 Segura, 4,400 Harper leading off. Those are all really good price tags. Rhys Hoskins is a really good price play as well. There's nobody in the lineup that's over 5K on DraftKings, and that makes it really, really appealing. So in the deep dive article today, I did my best to point out where I thought the hitters that I mentioned were at their best, and there were a lot of guys that I thought were from the Phillies that were better on DraftKings than other sites.
Literally the exact same thing I had mentioned today with Jake on the strategy show was Eric Fetty is not a good play, but LeBlanc at 45% is equally ridiculous.
There's a projection site that I looked at that is publicly available that has him, at least last I checked, LeBlanc that is, as the highest projected pitcher on the entire slate.
That's why it's publicly available.
That's going to be a no for me.
Oh, that's great. That is great. I don't even know how that happens. I mean, I don't care who you're facing. That's absurd. He's going complete game today for sure. But Fetty is not a guy that is at the top of my list. But do I think it's highly unlikely that LeBlanc outperforms him by a wide margin if you ran this same scenario 100 times? That he outperforms him, more than 50, 60% of the time by enough of a margin that would hurt you? No way.
Yeah, I mean, so to be clear, like I have LeBlanc projected for 12 and a half DraftKings points, and I have Fetty at 8. So I have LeBlanc as better.
Of course.
Just that I don't think either of them really come.
No, you have to have.
Yeah, one's going to be way more popular. So if you're in a roster build where you absolutely need to get to that price range, there's just not a huge difference in probability of reaching the score that you want between LeBlanc and Fatih.
Right, you have to project LeBlanc higher, but you also have to acknowledge he's not a very good pitcher. That's all.
Exactly.
All right. What are your thoughts on Pavetta? He has not looked bad at all since returning. He did give up 3 homers to a red-hot Atlanta team his last time out, but still went 6 2/3 innings with 6 strikeouts. He has 6 strikeouts or more in all 4 starts since being recalled from AAA. But this Washington team's pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on what to do with him because, I wrote about him in the article today. I've always liked Pavetta's stuff. I've always liked.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Somebody said, now that you said that, Laffy, LeBlanc will get the complete game shutout as a long reliever. Yeah, good call, Miles. I didn't think about that. And you didn't correct me either. So go ahead.
Yeah, I totally forgot.
Go ahead.
But Pavetta has been really good since coming back, and 2 of his starts were against difficult teams in the Dodgers and the Braves. He's struck out about 26%, walked like 4% in those 4 starts. So he's been really good, and I've always been a believer in his stuff. On the other hand, though, it is a Nats team that is almost at full strength right now. It's not the easiest strikeout lineup today with Suzuki in there and with Howie Kendrick in there. Both of those guys with low strikeout percentages, in addition to Soto and Rendon and Turner and Eaton. Just a really, really difficult strikeout spot for Pavetta. Right now it's looking like I'm not going to get a lot of him, and that scares me because I know how much upside he has and I know how good he can be. So I think there's a pretty legitimate chance that I'm just kicking myself later and being mad for not getting more. But the way I have him projected right now, I just don't see me getting too much of him.
What are your thoughts on hitters?
I like the hitters here. I think it should be pretty favorable hitting conditions. The weather is warm, at least in Baltimore, which, I'm like, I don't know, 40 miles from DC or something. It's humid as hell today. Like, you walk outside and you just start sweating. So the ball should be carrying pretty well. Pavetta has always, had some issues with home runs, and that hasn't changed even over these last 4 starts since coming back from the minors. So I think Juan Soto is very affordably priced. Matt Adams, especially on FanDuel at, I think it's $3,000, is at a really nice price point. I like, at the very least, getting to some Nats bats as one-offs, and then you already touched on Philadelphia, especially on DraftKings being at very, very affordable prices.
Okay. Yeah, and Pavetta, even though he's pitched well, this is also somebody that when he struggles, he gives up home runs, and that's what you're looking for, right? I mean, he's made 8 starts this season. He's allowed multiple home runs in 4 of them. So half of the starts he's made, he's allowed multiple home runs. And even some of his better starts, he will give up some solo shots. So it's not like you can't produce runs against Pavetta, even if he's a decent enough pitcher. And I think you can't really overstate what that means if you're getting batters at a decent price. All right. Yeah. Toronto and LA. What's up?
I just said yeah because I wasn't really listening, and then you paused, so I was agreeing with you.
Okay. I should have let you go. I should have just long paused it. I said Pavetta gives up a lot of home runs, so you can't understate what that means. Even if he has a decent game, he can give up power.
Okay, yeah, I actually do agree with you.
Yeah, why would you not? All right. Angels have been ridiculous lately, and they've got a pretty wicked lineup here. Fletcher's leading off, though. We have him projected for a lot of ownership on FanDuel. He's 39 on DraftKings, though, which isn't terrible. Upton, 42. Trout, coming off of that monster 7 RBI, 41 fantasy point game, is 5,800. No Shohei Ohtani, but still a pretty imposing lineup here. They're going up against Clayton Richard, who, man, if you look at Clayton Richard, I feel for the guy in one sense. His first 4 matchups this year, or 5, were the Red Sox, the Rays, the Yankees, the Diamondbacks, and the Houston Astros. So he's drawn a gauntlet of difficult opponents. But he's also not good. And one thing you and I have kind of always pointed out with Clayton Richard is, even when he was in San Diego, right? Like, this guy will get a lot of ground balls, but when he misses his spots, the ball goes really far and it goes in the air. And that's one of the reasons he's always been so homer prone when it comes to righties, because despite being a ground ball pitcher, he's not a pinpoint pitcher either. He's not always hitting his spots, and he misses them a lot. against an LA team that never misses the ball, that could be problematic. And I expect everything to be put in play here at the Rogers Center.
Yeah, I think it's a really brutal spot for Richard for the reasons you said. For one, it's a right-handed heavy lineup, and at the top you have a lot of power, but also a lot of guys to make contact, and it's a park that isn't gonna save Richard. When he was at his best, he was in San Diego and would do really well against lefties, and then you just had to hope he was getting ground balls against righties. He's been really bad so far this season, but even going back to last year against righties, he's allowed a 203 ISO, 364 expected WOBA. 14.6% strikeout percentage. Just a lot of stuff working against him here. You mentioned David Fletcher, and I think he's really interesting because it's totally site dependent how much interest I have in him. Obviously he's leading off on a team with an almost 6 implied run total, so he's a good play anywhere. But on FanDuel, he is a shortstop and he's really inexpensive. So I think he's one of the best shortstop options on FanDuel. On Yahoo, he's more expensive at $18. So it's actually you're paying for David Fletcher. And then on DraftKings, he's a third baseman and outfielder, which are probably the two easiest positions to fill on the slate today. And also, when you talk about the Angels, Trout, Upton, and Calhoun are also outfielders. So it's tougher to get the Fletcher on than it is on DraftKings or on FanDuel or Yahoo. And FanDuel is where you really want to be playing him.
All right. What about the other side of this game? Toronto is very inexpensive. Jose Suarez, I'm not going to go over everything I rattled off during the strategy show. This is your first show of the day, so you can give your take on him. But I'm not buying into him being anything special. I think he's just okay, if that. And Toronto has a good amount of cheap hitters today, which at least makes them interesting. I haven't looked at their stack on the top stack tool what their ownership's going to be, but obviously you have Guerrero at 3,500 on DraftKings. Gurriel's a little bit pricey, but a lot of these guys, even some of your lefties like Biggio batting cleanup. I was hoping Jansen would be in the lineup, and he's not, which sucks. But there are a few cheap Toronto bats. Hernandez batting fifth, Grichuk batting sixth at 35 and 34 respectively. How are you approaching the Blue Jays?
Same way I've approached them the last few days. I think that at the very least, they offer you a lot of upside as a mini stack or as one-offs. Suarez is a top 100 prospect. There's a chance that he ends up being good, but he's also only 21 years old, and we haven't really seen a whole lot out of him yet. Only about a 21% strikeout percentage at AAA this year, and a 20% strikeout percentage this year, 21 last year. Elevated walk percentages both years at AAA. And what it really comes down to for me is just that Vlad Guerrero continues to be underpriced across the industry. Randall Grichuk's too cheap for his power. Same goes for Teoscar Hernandez, who is affordable on DraftKings, but he's dirt cheap on FanDuel, like 2,500. So I just think that there's more of an advantage in getting to these really cheap Toronto bats as guys to fill out your lineups with.
So do I, and I'm just not sold on Suarez being anything more than okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the future. I don't think he's there yet, though.
No, and he's not someone that I'm too worried about going out there and racking up 10 strikeouts either.
The only reason I'm worried about him doing that is because he's facing the Blue Jays.
Right.
And that solely has to do with the Blue Jays.
It's a product of the opponent, not of the pitcher. Right, of course. But that's also why the Blue Jays are cheap. Everything's baked into their salaries.
Right, exactly. The Blue Jays right now are just priced as they're priced for the level of production they give and not the amount of power they have.
Exactly. Right. You're not pricing in the fact that if the Blue Jays scored 9 runs with 4 homers, it wouldn't be a shock because they have that power.
Right. It's not pricing in that for however many runs the Blue Jays score, there's a good chance that almost all of them are from home runs.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, they're not small balling 5 runs in the second.
Right. Yeah, they're not hitting singles the other way and just they're not stringing together 5 hits in a row to where you're like, oh, I have a Blue Jay stack and they have 3 runs, but I don't have that many points because they're all singles. They don't do that.
I think we've talked enough shit on the Blue Jays. Let's move on. St. Louis, by the way, we do like them, but St. Louis and Miami, Adam Wainwright, Zach Gallen. This is an awesome matchup to talk about, man, because ownership has changed throughout the day. Let's make that clear. Bundy was a lot higher earlier. Bumgarner was a lot lower earlier. Zach Gallen was around 12%. He's still at 12%. Wainwright was around 20. That's on DraftKings. He's now at 17. On Yahoo, Wainwright right now is at 19%. Galan's $28, and he's only still at 17%. I mean, let's start with Zach Galan here. The dude's racking up a very solid amount of strikeouts. He's not walking a ton of batters. He's throwing 96 to 100 pitches each start. He has a .76 whip against righties this season, and he's allowing less than a home run per 9. So, would I love to see him allow half a home run per 9? Sure, I'd love to see him suppress power entirely. But what I've seen when researching Galan, this guy is not Yamamoto. He's not Eliseo Hernandez. Like, he does have some legitimately good stuff.
Yeah, I was reading the scouting report on him on MLB Pipeline because they actually had him. They only had him as like the Marlins number 18 prospect, which I thought was lower than I expected.
That's not saying a lot when you're talking about the Marlins, but yeah, he's been good.
Yeah, but the scouting report on him was saying that maybe not the highest upside pitcher, but one of the highest floor pitchers in their system. Projects as like a mid to back end starter. Has really good command, has good enough stuff that plays up because of his throwing motion and all that. So really everything looks good. He struck out 33% of hitters at AAA. He only walked 5%. Reasonable ground ball percentage, also a high infield fly ball percentage. Just putting up really, really good numbers. And talking about a Cardinals team that has talent, but they've been below average against right-handed pitching as far as production goes with a 92 WRC plus. They've been league average in terms of strikeout percentage around 22%. So yeah, I like Galan here. I expect to kind of live in this range, this mid-range of arms with Galan and Wainwright and Bundy. I think that's where a lot of my exposure will go, and Galan's certainly not an exception.
I agree. The New Orleans Baby Cakes.
Yeah.
What a name. I like him here. There's obviously some risk. It's a pretty disciplined St. Louis team. They're not bad at all. You Goldschmidt, DeYoung, Ozuna, Carpenter. The 1 through 4 is a little scary, but you also have 7 righties, including Wainwright in the lineup?
The thing I really liked from the scouting reports was that he had good command. He has decent stuff and really good command, which that doesn't profile or it doesn't lead to someone that is likely to, 3 years from now be like Garrett Cole or something. He doesn't have that kind of stuff, but it does make me think that there might be a little bit less of a learning curve at the major league level because he's already good at putting pitches where he wants them, not just at throwing strikes. Guys that, get by with just throwing strikes in the minors can kind of struggle to adjust in the majors because if they're missing in the zone, they're going to get hit really hard. Whereas, he's already shown the ability to put pitches exactly where he wants them.
Yep, for sure. And he's not Darwinzon Hernandez either.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, though. There's a big difference between command and control. One of them in the minors might be all right, but just being able to throw pitches over the strike zone doesn't always work once you get up to the major league level. Exactly. Oh, look at that. TJ Warren to the Indiana Pacers.
I can't even process what that means.
You don't know who TJ Warren or the Indiana Pacers are?
I know what it literally means, that TJ Warren is now on the Indiana Pacers. I was trying to think through the Pacers roster and what that means and just drew a blank.
That's good stuff. How do you like the Mike Conley trade?
I think Rubio is good too. So
I love how you just completely zone out of basketball to the point where your brain can't even answer a simple question.
I literally cannot think of who is on the Jazz besides the guy that Conley is replacing and Rudy Gobert.
I like Mike Conley. Utah, good team. Oh man, I thought the Grizzlies actually made the right move there. They're paying him $33 million this year, dude. You can process that. Adam Wainwright, St. Louis against Miami. Here, we're back in your wheelhouse. I'm surprised his ownership is lower than Dylan Bundy, honestly, knowing that Bundy's going to be facing 6 lefties today, albeit, below average. Wainwright has not even been that bad. And he's been like a lot of these other guys who are getting a lot of called strikes and are just controlling everything and putting it where they need it to go. He's also had some upside this season. I'm not saying I expect that to be the case today, But if Ponce de Leon can go out with 6 scoreless and 6 Ks against him, I don't think it's insane to think that Wainwright can either. And I don't expect him to be limited after pitching 10 days ago. What are your thoughts on Wainwright against the Marlins?
Yeah, I'm higher on him now than I was when I wrote the article earlier. I didn't include him because I like Galan and I like Bundy, and it's Adam Wainwright. But after digging in more throughout the day, I'm going to get there somewhat. I still have him behind Bundy and Galan, but his splits have been pretty drastic this year, and he's facing an almost entirely right-handed lineup. He's this season. He's allowed a 118 ISO, 295 expected WOBA. Not much power in this lineup, not many lefties. So he's just someone where if you're looking at his overall season numbers, they're going to be a lot worse than you would expect him to be against this particular lineup. So, coming around on Wainwright.
I don't have an issue with him. I really thought that he'd be more popular. He probably isn't because he's a little bit more expensive than you'd want to pay for him. That would be my guess. But 17% is not crazy at all on a slate like this. And I don't have any issues with that. I'm not paying $8K for him on FanDuel. That certainly won't be the case. And on Yahoo, where he's $31, I think he's perfectly fine there. So Yahoo and DraftKings on 2 pitcher sites. I like Wainwright today. Do you like any bats from this game? I don't really have much at all.
If I did anything from this game, it would be getting to some Cardinals just because this guy's making his major league debut. I think he's good. I'd rather roster him than the Cardinals if I can only roster one. But, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a talented pitcher still get, lit up in his first major league start.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anyway, we'll move on here. Chicago Cubs, New York Mets. Another new face. Walker Lockett going up against Tyler Chatwood, who probably wishes he wasn't on the mound today, but here he is. Dude, this guy, I can't tell you how many times you and I brought this up over the past couple of years. Like, yeah, he gets ground balls, but his walk rates, particularly against lefties, are so alarming. Like last year, I'm pretty sure he finished the season with a negative K- BB rate versus lefties. This year, again, it's been absolutely dreadful. And you just take a look, even just take a cursory look at some of Chatwood's numbers this season. 14% walk rate against lefties, 14% walk rate against righties. The strikeouts are always pretty dismal. Is there anything redeeming about Chatwood? The only reason I'm asking is because of how cheap he is, and we always kind of talk about that. But it's really hard for me to say anything even remotely decent about this guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing redeeming is that on DraftKings he's $4,600.
Yeah, right.
He threw 53 pitches his last time out. He threw 62 pitches on May 22nd. So like a month ago, he threw 62 pitches once. He's not fully stretched out. I don't expect him to go very deep. The Mets also aren't a bad offense. They're middle of the road, a little above average in terms of production. So, good pitchers can pick up some strikeouts against them, but Chatwood's not good, and there's a million ways for him to struggle. So, this if you haven't figured it out from listening already, there's a lot of good offenses and a lot of good stacks on this slate. The Mets aren't at the top of the list for me because I expect that they will see a bunch of different arms, but they certainly could have some success against Chatwood. But most importantly, not getting to Chatwood. And I think Jeff McNeil on Yahoo in particular is a really good play at $10.
Yeah, so do I. Really good play on Yahoo. No question about it. Do you envision yourself having Chatwood?
No.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I mean, like you said, the only redeeming quality is $4,600, but
I have him projected for 9 DraftKings points. I have him projected slightly ahead of Nestor Cortez
and
in
Eric
the same price
Fetty.
range. Yeah, and Eric Fetty and Glenn Sparkman. So, I guess he's my favorite pitcher below 5K, but I just don't think it's going to be that necessary.
Yeah, probably not. No, I don't think you need to go there. Again, it's not a Scherzer or a Sale slate either. Like, it's not that necessary. Right. And there's good I won't say good, but there's some really solid enough mid-range pitching with decent ceiling.
So, there's mid-range pitching that's not really any worse than the top.
Exactly.
When you consider their price.
Exactly.
And there's also cheap, like there's a lot of bats that I want to pay for, but there's also a lot of underpriced bats. So I really don't think it's going to be difficult if you spend like 15K on pitcher on DraftKings, for example, with 2 of those mid-range guys to still get the hitting that you want.
What are your thoughts on the Cubs?
Lockett's not very good either. Really struggled in a limited time in the majors with the Padres in the past. So far this year, he's made 4 starts, I think, I'm on the wrong page. 4 starts at AAA. He has struck out 3 starts, 4 games at AAA. He's thrown 24.2 innings. He has struck out 8.9% of hitters, which is not a very good number. He does have a 60% ground ball rate. He had good ground ball numbers in the past as well. That's kind of been his thing throughout, the upper levels of the minor leagues and in his limited time with the Padres in the past. The Cubs, though, are a good offense. Not a ton of strikeouts against right-handed pitching. They are above average. The thing is that they're kind of expensive. You don't have great hitting weather in Chicago today, and it's kind of tough for me to pay up for a team that is more expensive than like the Angels against Richard or even the Astros or the Phillies. So a secondary stack for me.
All right. Let's move on to the next one here. Before we do, we had a question from someone in our premium Slack chat that asked, as a stack, basically here, 1v1, would you prefer Yankees or Angels, Adam?
Let me see.
That's a tough one, but.
Yeah, I like them both a lot. So I'm just going to the stack tool on the site, and we have the Yankees. Yeah, so looking at the stack tool on the site, I'd rather go to the Angels because we have them projected with almost twice as high a chance of being the top stack, and we have them relatively lower owned. We have them with more ownership than the Yankees, but we have their chances of being the top stack being much higher than their aggregate ownership, whereas the Yankees are identical.
Okay, good stuff. And yeah, you're a premium sub. Check that out, man. That'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's not a cop out. That's I personally don't directly use the top stack tool, but it does basically exactly what my process does too. If I just the way I have all my stuff set up, if I get a lot of Yankees lineups created and a lot of Angels lineups created, my process is just going to prefer the Angels because of the same information that's in that tool.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to the next one. We are at game 6 on a 10-gamer here. Milwaukee Brewers, Cincinnati Reds, Jimmy Nelson, Tanner Roark. Nelson was projected for some ownership earlier in the day, which I found, and he still is, by the way, which I found to be pretty outrageous. Maybe you have a different take. 16% right now on DraftKings. I'll happily pass on that. And on FanDuel, my guess is not much at all. Well, 11%, 10%. And on Yahoo, Jimmy Nelson is 13%. He's shown nothing. His walk rate was through the roof in the minors in an extended rehab, whatever you want to call it, stint. And now he comes up. He gets the 2 best matchups any pitcher could draw against Miami, San Francisco. Disappoints in both. Walks 6 total batters. He hasn't looked good, man. And now he's going up against, sure, the Reds aren't good, but they also don't strike out. Miller Park is a great hitter's park. What am I missing about Nelson outside of him being at like a mid 7K price point?
No, all you're missing is that he was good in 2017 before he got hurt. And
right. Yeah. 2 years ago. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And normally I'm on the side of I want to get to someone first and I want to be there when he's good.
I literally said the exact same thing this morning, but there's nothing to show me that it's going to turn into good from the numbers that he's had.
Right. There's almost without question going to be a point between now and the end of the season where we take hitters against Jimmy Nelson or we don't roster him or whatever. It's like, damn, okay, I missed it today.
Sure.
Jimmy Nelson just went out there and had a great game. But the walk percentage, like you said, was terrible at AAA. It's been really bad in his first 2 starts here. The strikeout numbers haven't been great either. Fastball velocity sitting around 92 miles an hour over those first couple of starts. And now you're pitching in Miller Park against a Reds team that does, at the very least, have power. Jesse Winker's got some power from the left side. Dietrich certainly has power from the left side. Suarez is a really good hitter. Votto may or may not be less dead now than he was earlier in the season. And then, Senzel, Puig, they both have power too. So it's not like it's a lineup that you're going to just walk over if you are getting behind the Callens and having to throw fastballs over the plate. They'll still take advantage. So there's enough mid-range guys on this slate that I feel a little bit better about that. I don't really see myself getting to Nelson. I'd rather get to some Reds bats. And then on the other side, Tanner Roark is cheap. He's only 6,500 on DraftKings. So from a point per dollar or a price, it's kind of like Wade LeBlanc, where Roark's a better pitcher than LeBlanc, but he's facing a much, much better team than LeBlanc is, and it's in a worse park for pitchers. Roark, I expect to get ownership, though, just because of his price tag. And so I would much rather be getting to some of these Brewers bats who I think from a medium projection standpoint are probably too expensive. 5,200 for Moustakas, 5,900 for Yelich. Like Yelich is more expensive on DraftKings than Mike Trout. That's not good from a projection standpoint, but from ownership, that's going to drive the ownership down a bit, and you are getting a lot of left-handed power in a park that really plays off left-handed power.
I love the Brewer bats here.
Yep,
really like them a lot. And if you want 6 points on 2 walks and a run scored, Joey Votto is your guy. But I think that Tanner Roark is due to come back down to earth. And he's never been a terrible pitcher, and he's honestly never been someone that I love picking on, but this is just too good of a spot. He has a 6.38 xFIP against lefties, 25% ground ball rate. He's striking them out 16.8% of the time. This is not the matchup you want if those are your numbers.
Yeah, and so I had pointed out with Wainwright that he was on the good side of his drastic splits where he's getting lit up by lefties and striking out righties. Tanner Roark this year, if you look at his overall numbers, it's like, okay, that's pretty good, or decent at least. He's struck out 22.9%. He has a 4.4 xFIP. It's fine for 6,500. I'll take my chances. But against righties, 269 expected WOBA, 0.074 ISO, 28.3% strikeout percentage. Against lefties, 398 expected WOBA, 180 ISO, 16.8 strikeout percentage. Just a huge, huge difference. And now you're facing a bunch of really good lefties in a park that is great for left-handed power.
And I believe that Roark has a 212 expected ISO against lefties too.
That sounds right. Yep.
So, and like a 380 xWOBA or something around there.
398.
Was that?
398.
398. There you go.
Yeah. 386 actual WOBA.
Right. I mean, those numbers are not good. And another thing that's big, Moustakas was expected to return during the weekend series. He's back in the lineup. So good luck going up against Yelich, Moustakas, Grandal. I'll even throw Eric Thames and Shaw in there. It's not going to be pretty, and this is a team that I definitely want to pick on, or that I want to target. Do you have anything else from this one?
No, it's just bats for me. I mean, maybe like if you're playing 150 lineups on DraftKings, 6,500 Roark is fine if you get some, but I don't expect to get to the 20% or whatever we're projecting.
Okay, fair enough. Now
these 22% right now.
These bats are not cheap. They will cost you, but they're also in a really, really favorable spot. I mean, on Yahoo, Grandal's $23, which is the most expensive catcher by a pretty wide margin. They are expensive, but I think that'll probably drive ownership down quite a bit. Like their ownership on Yahoo right now is 9th at 5%. Higher top stack probability, obviously not good value, quote unquote value, but definitely one of these teams that has a ton of upside today. And if you haven't signed up on Yahoo yet, you do so using the sign up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which are as good as cash, can be used on the site to play and win and withdraw money. Lower management fees than any other site. Not to mention that if you get in the morning, they have that zero management fee, $3 entry over there on Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. So check it out. You can do it. You can make it easier too by going to our Spotlight Hitters article. It's free on awesemo.com and clicking the Yahoo link right there, where you can use the code AWESEMO when you sign up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points when you deposit, just as good as cash. They are the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Kansas City, Minnesota. Jake Odorizzi, Glenn Sparkman. Odorizzi's been really good. He's been really, really good. No more reverse splits, at least not as extreme as we had seen. Or I'm saying the splits in themselves are not nearly as extreme as they used to be. Against lefties this year, he's got a 3.6 xFIP. Against righties, 4.74. So there's still something there. And I think he's due for a little bit of regression just looking at a few of these numbers like his BABIP and his WHIP. but he has been better. He's striking righties out 24% of the time, lefties 33% of the time. The big thing with Odorizzi is I think there are going to be games where he gets rocked, but I also think that Odorizzi is now a pretty high upside pitcher just based on the K upside. The problem is, are you looking to pay for that? I mean, he's very expensive today.
No, I mean, I think Odorizzi's good. I don't think he's anywhere close to as good as this price tag. If I'm paying up, I think Charlie Morton's a better pitcher. I think Frankie Montas is a better pitcher, and Odorizzi's priced right in the middle. There's some pretty big red flags for me on Odorizzi as far as what his numbers are going to look like rest of season. He's got by far a career high strikeout percentage this year at 28.3%. Career average is 22.5%. His zone contact percentage this year is 77.5% compared to 83.9% for his career. He does have a career high chase percentage as well, and swinging strike percentage, but just a huge percentage of the swings and misses are on pitches in the zone, which I'm not really sure how sustainable that's going to be for him. Also, he's allowing really no home runs on fly balls. 6.6% home run per fly ball percentage this year, 10.3% for his career. So I expect the home runs to go up. Again, he hasn't been bad, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good as he has been. It's not like it's a great Kansas City team, but I really just don't want to pay this price tag for Odorizzi.
Neither do I. Wouldn't be surprised to see a strong start, but you're going to have to force him into lineups if you want him. Glenn Sparkman on the other side of this one. Minnesota, obviously, with one of the highest totals on the slate. Actually, the second highest behind only the Angels. Minnesota's at 5.6 here against Sparkman. They've been hitting really well. Obviously, one of the highest implied totals almost every night, it seems. How are you approaching this Minnesota team tonight?
I like them. I like a lot of offenses today, though. So I wouldn't say I like them as much as like the Angels or the Yankees. I'd put the Phillies at least on DraftKings ahead of them. I'd put the Brewers ahead of them. Sparkman, pitches to contact, kind of like a worse version of Brad Keller, where he gets ground balls, he doesn't give up a ton of power. So not like the most appealing guy to target. He has been worse against lefties than righties since last year. 359 WOBA, 191 ISO to lefties compared to 307 and 122 to righties. So if you are looking to target against him, you lean toward left-handed power. You have that with Rosario and Kepler, but they're really expensive. And then beyond them, you don't really have left-handed power bats in this lineup. So, they're in a good spot, but there's a lot of those on the slate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they're very expensive too.
Yeah. I mean, we do have them. The top stack tool has them being popular, but still not as popular as they should be. But I just don't think that they're a team I'll be getting to all that much.
Yeah, I mean, top stack probability is 11.4%. So it is higher than their ownership. The question is, how do you get there? And the Angels, though, also not as popular as they should be, at least what we're showing. So there's a lot of that. And I guess we can move on unless you want to talk about any Royal bats here. I know that some of them are down in price, but it's hard to fall in love with any of these Kansas City bats.
Yeah, definitely not in love with anything here, especially with how many good hitting spots there are. Nicky Lopez, I guess, deserves a mention because he's 2,900 on DraftKings, batting second at second base. But that's not even that valuable because if you're just looking for a value guy, you have Altuve at 3,800. So there's a clear, really good hitter who's cheap as well.
All right. 3 to go here. Oakland, Tampa Bay, Frankie Montas. I mentioned it this morning. He's going up against Charlie Morton. The splitter for Montas has made a big difference this year, and it has really allowed him to get some strikeouts, and I think it's made his fastball a lot more potent as well, a pitch that he didn't really miss many bats on, despite sitting 97 on it. The splitter's getting a lot of swings and misses, and it's resulted in plenty of strikeouts, but he's up at 10K on DraftKings. He's on Yahoo equally expensive at, what is he, 50, I think? 47. So I guess it's not as bad, all things considered. But it's not the greatest matchup. Tampa's tough. The park's in his favor. But you talk about not wanting to pay up for Odorizzi. Is Montas any different?
Yeah, because I think he's better than Odorizzi is. there's a couple things that I like about this matchup. I wrote about it a bit in the article today. So there's 5 lefties and 4 righties in the Tampa Bay lineup. Tampa Bay has the 12th highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year. They have been above average as far as production goes. Montas leads all qualified starters this year with the lowest barrel per batted ball event percentage at 3%, which, so 3% of balls put in play against him have been barreled by opposing hitters. That's obviously the best in the league. So that's really good. He struck out over 27% of left-handed hitters. And the reason for that is that he is throwing the splitter that you mentioned more often to lefties than the righties, getting a ton of swings and misses. It's leading to a higher strikeout percentage, but then also the righties in this lineup, which is Tommy Pham, Avisaíl Garcia, Willy Adames, and Mike Zunino. Since the start of last season, they've struck out 23.1, 25.3, 26.2, and 33.9% of the time. So his strikeout numbers against righties aren't as good this year at about 23.5%, but he's facing 4 righties that will strike out. And it's not like he's been getting hit hard by the righties. He's just not striking them out quite as much as lefties. So you get him as the cheapest option out of Morton, Odorizzi, and himself at the top. And I think he's the second best pitcher. I think he's got the best strikeout matchup between him and Morton, at least. So I do like Montas quite a bit.
Okay. So would you say he's your top pitcher above that 10K range?
Above the 10K range, yeah, when you factor in the price difference between him and Morton.
Morton's been phenomenal this year. Oakland's just not striking out that much, and he is going to cost you. Like, I have no problem with Morton. I just don't know if it's necessary. I mean, yeah, he's striking lefties out 33% of the time, 29% of the time against righties. He's been fantastic. He's really kept the home runs down, specifically against righties. He's allowed 1 across 178 plate appearances. He's got a 13.2% swinging strike rate. But one of the biggest things for Morton is you look at that called plus swinging strike, 33.7%. That is the same as Garrett Cole and better than almost all of the best pitchers in the league. Like, it is real what he's doing. There's no denying that.
Yeah, every stat looks really good for him. Striking out about 28% of righties, about 32% of lefties. PCRA is, I believe, 9th out of all qualified starters this year. 3.3 xFIP's the best on the slate. And yeah, his PCRA is 2.92, so 9th best among qualified starters. He's only allowed 4.9% of balls in play to be barreled, so that's a really good percentage as well. The only real issue we have is his walk percentage, but that's not even, extremely high. It's just a little worse than we would like at 8.9%. The only issue I really have with Morton is that Oakland does have one of the lower strikeout percentages against right-handed pitching, 21.1% this year. A pretty average team, a ballpark that, doesn't play up power, but it does kind of mitigate strikeouts because so many foul balls get caught. So, Morton's my highest projected pitcher. But if I am paying up, I would rather take the savings to Montas unless it's not really getting me anything.
That's the concern I have, too. Montas is probably just better in the matchup, not as an actual pitcher, because I think Morton's really, really good. Do you like any hitters?
No.
All right.
Actually, Austin Meadows on Yahoo is $16.
All right. 2 games to go here. I should let you know that the promo code is Deeper Dive, all one word. If you want to sign up for 30 days, 1 month, half off of Awesemo.com membership, Awesemo Plus membership, the player projections, the Yahoo or the ownership projections, player projections, top stack tool, everything we mentioned, everything that Alex uses himself, and the articles from myself and Adam and Jake and Josh and Ben and everybody. It's well worth coming over to check it out. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder, and a lot more that we don't have time to get to because we only have 7 minutes left and Live Before Lock's coming up after us. But if you want to check it out, you can see the free content. Look, you can still watch us here every day on the Deeper Dive and on the YouTube channel. But if you want to see what's behind the scenes and all of the other stuff that's offered at Awesemo, use the promo code Deeper Dive. Get 50% off your first month. Bumgarner, Julio Urias as your opener here. Bumgarner with a lot of projected ownership, Adam.
Yeah. What do you think the line is on if Bumgarner gets through the order more than 1 time before he's ejected?
You think he's gonna plunk Muncey?
I would be shocked if he doesn't. I think it's just a matter of if he gets ejected or gets a warning.
My guess is that there will be warnings before the game, and if he does plunk him, he'll get ejected on the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not factoring it into how I'm approaching the slate, but he's just not the kind of guy that
Lets
lets that
things
stuff die.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. This is going to be must watch television on that first plate appearance.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as Bumgarner goes, I'm just not really getting there anyway. He's more expensive than that entire mid range of guys we've talked about, with the exception of Yahoo, where I think he is very affordable at $36. But he's facing a good Dodgers team. He's outside of San Francisco. It's not that I expect him to be bad. It's just that I don't. He's not a great strikeout pitcher anyway. He's not really a higher upside pitcher than those guys priced below him, and he's in a tough matchup against the Dodgers.
What are your thoughts on the whole Dodger pitching setup that we have today?
Do we know who's coming in after Urias? Because it was supposed to be Caleb Ferguson, but he ended up coming in after Hill left with injury last night.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Ferguson. I saw Ross Stripling in some places. I really don't know.
That's he's 8,500. Never mind. I was gonna say that's interesting.
Yeah, no, he's priced up.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I mean, either way, I guess it doesn't matter that much because I'm not going to the Giants anyway. They suck, and there's like 12 good hitting spots on the slate.
What are your thoughts on some of the Dodgers bats that are like I mentioned this morning? I think that Kike Hernandez might be the best value bat across the board. Really, really inexpensive.
Yeah, I like Kike. He's still just really underpriced. I'm never opposed to getting to the Dodgers anyway, just because they're a really good team, and there is a non-zero chance that you're getting like Derek Holland after the second inning. But I would be more inclined to do that, or to be getting to the Dodgers if there weren't 10 other stacks that I really like.
Yeah, it makes sense. And on a 10-game slate, do you have any other interest? I don't really think we can even speak much towards the Giants bats right now. And even if we did know pitching, we probably wouldn't have much interest. A lot of those righties for this Giants team, they've been so brutal against lefties. I feel like it has to turn at some point for some of them. But Buster Posey's a shell of his old self. So is Longoria. Most of these guys are never going to be what they once were.
Yeah, I mean, the price tags are appealing if we had like a Cole Scherzer slate or something. But if I'm looking for a cheap offense to stack, it's in the next game, and it's not the Giants.
Well, let's talk about that last game before we get out of here. Baltimore and Seattle, Dylan Bundy. Bautista opening for Seattle. Wade LeBlanc is your probable long reliever, projected to have monster ownership. But I want to talk about Bundy first. I know you said you like him a lot. I'm a little bit more worried than you are.
Oh, I mean, I'm worried too. It's just that, he's 7,600 and he's okay. We just got the Mariners lineup. There's 6 lefties in it, which is what I figured would happen, but didn't want to happen. Strikeout numbers have been pretty drastic this year. He struck out 30% of righties compared to just 17.8% of lefties. Sorry, that's since last year. 17.6% of lefties this year. He's done a better job of keeping the ball in the park. 165 ISO to lefties compared to 267 to righties. But the strikeout upside is really, what I'd be concerned with. You and I talked about it before, though. The one thing that does still intrigue me about Bundy when it comes to left-handed hitters is he has an 18.5% swinging strike percentage on his changeup this year. So he does at least still have a swing and miss pitch against them. It just hasn't translated to strikeouts. His slider, he doesn't have that slider against righties, obviously, or he doesn't have the slider that he does against righties to really get the strikeouts there. But it wouldn't be surprising if we saw the strikeout numbers at least tick up a bit. But basically, it just comes down to, he's inexpensive enough. He's no worse than Adam Wainwright or, Zach Galan, whatever we're getting from him. There's just not a ton of pitching that you feel really confident in on this slate. So, and Bundy, will go 100 pitches. So I am perfectly fine getting to him.
How about Wade LeBlanc?
I assume I'll have some on DraftKings only. I wouldn't on FanDuel because you only roster one pitcher. I wouldn't on Yahoo because I think we might have forgotten to mention this. Nick Pavetta is $25 on Yahoo.
We did forget to mention that.
Yeah.
Pretty pertinent information.
Yeah, no way I'm paying more money for Wade LeBlanc than Nick Pavetta. And I'm also not paying the same price tag for Wade LeBlanc as for Zach Gallen. So it's specifically DraftKings. If somehow he were getting low ownership today, I would take my chances against an Orioles team that's been below average against left-handed pitching and now isn't going to have Trey Mancini. It's just a really brutal lineup. But He is going to be popular. And basically, what ends up happening is if LeBlanc goes out there and gives you like 20 points or something, that's really good, but you're still competing with, 10,000 out of the 20,000 people in your tournament that had LeBlanc. And if he doesn't have a good start, or just gets like 10 points or something, you're getting a leg up if you have some other combination of pitching that just really outscores him. So if he keeps being projected for like 40% ownership, I would expect that I get to some LeBlanc, but nowhere near that amount. And if I'm looking for a leverage stack, the Orioles are really obvious. I mean, you get a catcher in Severino, you get some power in Nunez, VR is decent, Alberto's cheap, or at the very least a cheap stack where you can get to like Morton plus some other pretty decent pitcher, and just hope that you blow up half the field that has LeBlanc.
What about Seattle against Bundy, though?
It's really tough for me. Not a great park. Malik Smith is kind of interesting. I'm pulling up on these numbers now. He used to really suck at
I
holding
like
runners.
Vogelbach, too, though. He's really not that expensive.
Yeah, the thing with Vogelbach, though, is just first base. You have Adams, you have Encarnacion,
Sure.
you have Voit.
Sure.
Just a pretty deep position. But, yeah, if you're talking about Vogelbach against a guy that doesn't really miss bats, he does have a ton of power. Do you remember, or I guess I almost have it now. I was just trying to see how Bundy's been with holding runners this season. I know he was bad in the past.
I can tell you. I got it pulled out. Unless if you're looking for just like stolen base numbers, or I can give you his swipe rate above average.
Yeah. He's only allowed 4 steals this year.
Yeah. He's been good. Let's see. On this slate, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 guys that have been better than him. Not stolen bases allowed, but swipe rate, and then takeoff rate above average is also, I think, pretty decent. So, yeah, he hasn't allowed a whole lot.
All right, yeah. So not a whole lot of interest in Seattle for me.
All right. I guess that'll do it for us. Live Before Lock's coming up next. And, hey, before you head out, if you like the video, if you like the content, you want to see more of it, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video right below us. It helps us a lot. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us keep doing what we're doing here at awesemo.com. Subscribe and hit that notification bell as well if you haven't already done so. Live Before Lock's coming up next. They're going to take you up till 7:05. Adam and I will be back with you tomorrow, same time, to close out the week. Good luck tonight, everyone.